All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. Never forget that, folks. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. I want you to remember this show does not run on freedom fumes alone. So if you're watching me on Rumble, smash, and I do mean smash, that green $ button during the show to drop a Rumble rant. It's kind of like your way of tossing me a cold one so early in the morning, and with politics and all the things going on in culture, sometimes I need one. Anyway, it keeps the vibes high and the mics on, and if you want to go all in, then click on that subscribe button for just $5 a month, because your support helps me fight the good fight. All right, folks, let us get into it. A quick announcement here. Next Tuesday, November 11th, I will be on Are You Smarter Than a Politician? It's a game show hosted by Free. Yep, that's his name. It's like, I don't know if it's like his legal name, but he goes by Free. So look forward to that. That's going to be, I believe, at 8 p.m. next Tuesday night. So that'll be fun. We will see if I'm smarter than a politician. And if I'm not, I'm done. We're done with politics. I'm done talking. I won't. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'll just walk away embarrassed. I'll just do my walk of shame, my political walk of shame. Anyway, that'll be fun. While we're talking about things, be sure to check out some of my past episodes, particularly on YouTube. I'm very close to hitting the next level for monetization, which would allow me to take super chats and memberships. And I know that you guys are dying to do that. So right now we're at out of the 3,000 watch hours that I require to get to that level, we're at 2,840. And that's for the last 365 days. So just go in and start watching some of the old episodes. I promise you, we are at episode 614. If you're watching this episode and you haven't watched all the other episodes, there are episodes for which you will find interesting. I promise. If you're finding anything that I'm giving you today of value and you're relatively new, there is stuff way back. I mean, I talk about anything and everything. So there'll be something there for you to check out and listen to. So go ahead and check some of those out. Help me out with the watch hours. All right. Politics, elections. I just want to, I was thinking about it last night and I was like, I guess I'll talk about. I don't really dive into the politics per se. I don't, it's not if you remember Rush Limbaugh, he would start a show and he would be like, oh, over here in Charlotte, this mayor and this mayor, this mayor and this incumbent or whatever. He was like, these two candidates are, going at it, and he would have his opinions and he would talk all about, he spent like an hour talking about, just a mayor race or something. And I don't really do that, but I figured today, because it is November 4th and because we have elections going on throughout the country, I figured I would give you some thoughts on some of the major elections happening. I'm not going to dive deep into it, just kind of give you, what I'm going to do actually is we're going to discuss some notable mayoral races, then a couple of governor races. Then after the break, I will dive in and I will just kind of brief you guys over some of the Libertarian Party candidates. And then I'm going to give you, with all of that said in mind, I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on the political landscape and the political parties. Like that's kind of the progression of today's episode. And hopefully it will be a value add. And then you will be like, man, this guy is pretty interesting. I better go back and watch some of his other shows so that he can get to the monetization level that he needs. Right? That's basically what we're doing today. So let me dive in to, but before I dive into these mayoral elections, I want to let you know that I'm going to be using some screenshots from Polymarket and Kalshi. They are sites that, kind of do the speculation for who's going to win. I don't get into the speculation of who is going to win very often. For a while, I have been kind of like, I think Zoran Mamdani is going to win just based on the conversations that I'm seeing and the momentum that I kind of see. But generally speaking, I don't dive in and kind of give my own speculation. So I'll use them as kind of like an idea, like, okay, it looks like looks like these races may go in this direction. This is just speculation, and I'm using somebody else's data set. I didn't analyze it. So it could be all wrong. It could be all correct. I don't really know. And then, so I just wanted to kind of let you guys know that this is what I'm up to today. So let's dive into some of these mayoral races. Let's see what we got here. So first up, the Boston mayoral race. All right. Michelle Wu, pretty much guaranteed win. Now you might say, well, how is that even possible? Well, if you don't know, her opponent, Josh Kraft, he actually withdrew 2 days after losing very badly in his primary, 72% to 23%. So he just was like, 2 days later, he was like, you know what? I'm done. I'll withdraw. So Michelle Wu is running in Boston unopposed. That's, I have never liked races that were unopposed, not even in my own party with the Libertarians, like even within our own internal elections. I'm like, guys, come on. We can't have unopposed people running. This is not good. And the reason I don't like unopposed, if there ever was a time to call for and say, hey, this person has a mandate, like that would be it. I don't really like the idea of saying somebody wins so much that they have a mandate. Usually it's exaggerated. We've talked about it before on the show where people will say, well, Trump has a mandate, and they kind of insist that, some mayor or some governor should be, really helping Trump's agenda. And I'm like, well, and they usually are pointing toward, it's usually somebody from the opposite party. So like here in Jacksonville, the Democratic mayor, people pointed at her and like, Trump has a mandate. And I'm like, well, she won her election at a greater margin than did Trump, won his election. So if Trump has a mandate, where does that put her? So I don't really like this whole mandate talk because you see that quite a bit. But if somebody's running unopposed, like their opponent saw fit to just said, screw it. And, I don't know Boston politics, but from what I could tell, just from a few minutes looking, it appears that she does, like, there's no Republican challenger whatsoever. Josh Kraft was a Democrat challenger. So I think I've got that correct. I might have it wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is one of the ones where there was no Republican and they were both Democrats, and the other Democrat bailed out. And so Michelle Wu is going to be unopposed. And I'm like, well, given those circumstances, that kind of suggests there's a bit of a mandate for Boston. And she had what's interesting is she had some controversies, relatively recently. So it's not like, this isn't like she was doing such a great job and everybody loves her per se, so much as, I look at it and I go, wow, like, okay, I don't get it, but whatever. She's running opposed, so it looks like she's going to win. Then let's jump over to Charlotte. So this is from Kalshi, who will win the mayor election in Charlotte. And it might be hard to read, but they've got the Democratic nominee versus the Republican nominee at 99% versus 10%. And so this is V. Lyles. She appears to have, pretty much a guaranteed win against the Republican challenger, Terry Donovan. And it's all but a guaranteed win over the Libertarian challenger, Rob Yates, who I had on episode 604. Really enjoyed him. It was a great conversation. If you are a Libertarian and you are in some way like, I want to run for office, if you want to know what your interviews should sound like, go watch the Rob Yates one. There were actually a couple of them this year that I was really impressed by. Rob Yates was one of them. Actually, and I'll give him a quick mention. Trying to blank on his name at the moment. I can see his face. The guy up in Alaska, I interviewed him, and for a young guy, he was like 25, and somebody in the chat throw me his name. For a young guy, I was really impressed because I was like, I think he's 25, and at 25 years old, I would have given worse answers. for sure. So that, like, I was really impressed by him, and I'm going to follow up and see. I don't know when his election is. I don't know if it's today or if it's further on out. But I'm going to check up on him and see how he's doing. Hopefully he wins. And then I was hoping somebody might quickly get that in the chat, but it looks like no such luck at the moment. But for some reason, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I could see his face, but a good young guy. He knew the political landscape very well. And he also had some really great answers. And it's not like when I interview somebody, it's not like I'm interviewing you and I'm a tough interviewer. I just like to think that I try to ask good, meaningful questions. And I think he had good, meaningful answers. And so I really appreciated that about him. So check that out. If somebody throws his name in the chat, I'll mention it here in just a moment. So then we move on over here to the Minneapolis mayoral election. Looks like Jacob Frey is going to win 67% to 34%, according to Polymarket. And then according to Kalshi, 74% compared to 28%. We'll go back to this picture since it's a little bit more visible for you guys. But Jacob Frey looks like he's going to win over Omar Fateh. And if you don't remember Omar, he is the candidate that conservatives were like squawking about because he was waving a Somali flag at some of his events. Now, I do think that's inappropriate. I think if you're running for election in the United States, the only flag that should be at any of your events, or at least the primary, let me put it this way, the primary flag, unambiguously, the primary flag should be a United States flag. Okay, now I'm not a big, huge, rah, rah, rah flag, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, Leighton, that's his name. That's part of his name. Gosh, I can't think of his name. That's going to drive me crazy. Anyway, so back to the flags. I'm not really big on the flag. When I go to an event and they pledge allegiance to the flag, as a courtesy, as part of decorum, I will say the Pledge of Allegiance. I know some of my libertarian peers get bent out of shape over it. I think that's kind of silly. I know they're all like, oh, dude, it was written by a socialist. I'm like, yeah, you and like 3 other people know that. Nobody else really cares. Most Americans just look at it as this is respect for our country, and this is part of decorum at this event. You know, when they say the pledge, you say the pledge, you put your hand over your heart. Maybe you give a salute if you're prior military or something. All right, but most people just look at it as a simple matter of decorum. And so therefore I kind of go with that, and I don't let it bother me. Nobody's ever really been like, you're going to be legally punished if you don't follow through on this Pledge of Allegiance. So I know like people are like, I don't pledge to a flag. And I'm like, I get it. I think it's just recitation, reciting at this point. I don't think it's not a pledge where people are really going to hold you to it. They're not going to be like, but you pledged, you said this, right? So it doesn't bother me, and I'll say it. But I will say that having said that, I do think it's inappropriate to wave a Somali flag, or any flag for that matter. Now, if you happen to be speaking to a group that is largely, they've got roots from another country, and you want to put up their flag to the side, and it's very unambiguously clear that it is a second, it's secondary to the United States flag, then I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem if if 80% of your crowd is Somali, and you have a big, huge American flag, and you're like, this is America, and then you have a tiny little Somali flag, I don't really care so much. Because I really, at the end of the day, I care more about your policies than anything. I mean, you could wave, how many people have waved the American flag, and then we look at their policies and we're like, this isn't even American. Like, this is garbage. So this is why I don't get bent out of shape too much over it. But it looks like he's not going to win anyway. So all of that squawking for naught. Let's see. Then we can jump over to Seattle. Seattle has Katie Wilson. She appears to be set to beat Bruce Harrell. I think it's how you say his name. 84% to 17% via Poly Market. And then we have over here on Kalshi, 84% to 18%. So almost dead even, like 1 percentage point difference there. Now, I don't know much about these two, and I don't really care too much about Seattle. I mean, it's an American city, so hopefully they do well, but it's somewhere far, far away from Jacksonville, so whatever for me. But I will say this, from a little bit of research, it does appear that Katie Wilson is significantly more progressive than is Bruce. So she may be winning, and they may go even further left. Speaking of going further left, let's jump on over to New York City here. Zoran Mamdani, 92%, compared to Andrew Cuomo's 8%. And then we've got 89% and 12% over here on Kalshi. Now, what's very interesting about this one is this has been like this has been the buzz. And I think it's the primary reason this has been a bit of a buzz is because Zoran Mamdani is a self-identified democratic socialist. And I dedicated personally like 7 hours of podcast time dedicated to discussing his policies and why I believe they're destined for failure. Meanwhile, people on the right, a lot of Republicans and conservatives, they couldn't shut up about him eating with his fingers. That's what they were worried about. I mean, they threw in a few words here and there about like, hey, the rent freeze idea is a bad idea. But they really focused on, oh my God, like several things. They focused on how he eats and, like, because that's what's going to make or break New York City. New York City will thrive or fail based on how their mayor eats. Do they use a fork and a knife or chopsticks or some other utensil, or do they use their fingers? That's the big deal. And I criticized the right for it, and they deserved it. And I take nothing back. They earned all of my criticism for that. Another thing that people were up in arms about were, who was it? Representative Ogles out of Nebraska, I think. He literally introduced legislation with the intent of stripping Mamdani of his citizenship. You're like, whoa, that must have been serious, right? If you look at his document, his letter, it was maybe it wasn't legislation, but he definitely wrote a letter, and he was like, hey, we should look into this and potentially strip him of his citizenship, because in this rap song he supported a group known as the what was it, the Brooklyn Five? No, I can't remember the name of the group, but it was a group that was apparently charged with and convicted of providing material support to Hamas. And in a rap song, I'm not joking. You might think, DL, you're just being silly. No, I promise you. Totally serious here. In a rap song, he said something, the something five, whatever they were named, my guys. That was it. It was like one line. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. Like, that's what you focused on, a rap song. And then they've also focused on some of his other stuff, like he came out and he was, getting all teary-eyed about his auntie, and then later clarified it was like his dad's cousin, and people were like, oh my God, he's totally like, I'm like, oh yeah, a politician lies about a family member feeling a certain way. News at 11, that's never happened before. So it's just like it felt to me like Republicans and conservatives, all they could focus on was the inconsequential stuff from Zoran Mamdani. And then occasionally they would talk about some of his policies. They also screamed about how, like, oh my God, he's a socialist, or they would call him a communist. And I know that I get to nitpicking here, but there is a distinction. And it's important to know that distinction, not because, like, from an academic perspective, but from a policy perspective, and to make sure that people will take you seriously. Because if you're like, oh, this dude's a commie, and then it turns out he's not a communist, he's actually a socialist, which is a distinct difference. And the people who are communist and socialist, and they're working to convince others that their ideas are the ones that people, like independents should support, like you're just giving them ammo, because they can be like, well, yeah, we're not really a communist. Here's why. Here's the distinction. And since they can't seem to get the distinction between a communist and a socialist correct, how much better do you think they're going to be able to identify good or bad policies, right? Like, so I feel like it totally played into their hand, to his hand. And that's why, so I wasn't nitpicking just because, the whole running joke in the Libertarian Party, like, oh, was he doing the whole, actually autistic thing? No, I was looking, I was like, I think you're just giving them an assist. Don't do that. Like, come out, be accurate, and be right. Because in the future, you don't want somebody to go, well, yeah, but you got it wrong here, so why should I trust you now? Even if he wins, you should at least be able to say, look, I called this, I called this, I called this, I was objective here, I was objective here. And at some point, perhaps some people will go, wow, you were right. You called this over and over and over again. And you didn't just call it like vaguely correct. You got it accurately correct. That's important. But the people on the right, they didn't seem to think so. They wanted to run with the nonsense. So fine. Let New York get worse than it already is. Let it crumble to the ground, because that's pretty much what's going to happen. So, but that's just a few of the notable mayoral races. So let's look at some of the state level races here real quick. We're just going to look at two. I'm not going all in on everything, because again, I'm in Florida. I'm just kind of offering some commentary on some of the notable races, and then I'm going to use that to kind of bounce off and kind of give you some of my perspective. So over here in New Jersey, the governor election, according to Poly Market, has Mickey Sherrill. I didn't even look up how to say these people's names. I wish they would just be John Smith and, Phil Brown or something. I don't know. Something easy for me to say. I am an American when it comes to pronouncing, names that are a little bit challenging. So if you could just keep your names to like Smith and Brown and Jones, that would be, thank you. Thank you very much if you would just do that. But it is what it is. So we've got Mickey and Jack here. Democrat is slated 85% compared to the 16%. Okay. Well, I mean, not a surprise there, really. And then over on Calshi, they have Shirelli. Oh, no, this is the New Jersey one. Yeah, New Jersey. Yeah. I'm getting confused here. So they have almost the same exact numbers, 84%, 17%, 85, and 16. So they're almost dead on. So the likely is that the Democrat's going to win. Surprise, surprise. And then over in Virginia, the Virginia governor looks like it's going to be Abigail Spanberger compared to Winsome Earl Sears. I don't think I've even heard that name. 4%, so that kind of makes sense, right? So it looks like we're going to have a Democrat win there. Now, I saw an interesting article. I'm going to pull this article up, and this comes from The Hill. So let me read you this article. Let me zoom in a little bit here so that you guys can see it mo better. All right, New Jersey, Virginia elections can make or break the Democrats' future. All right, so this is a very interesting article. So we'll go down here. Tomorrow, it's a little big. Back it up a little bit there. All right, tomorrow voters in New Jersey, and Virginia will take up their quadrennial role as national political bellwethers. The gubernatorial races in both states should favor Democrats, although both states have seen shades of purple emerge in recent years. New Jersey has long been a reliably blue state, last voting for a Republican presidential candidate in 1988. Okay? Whereas Virginia has gone for the Democratic presidential candidate in all 5 elections since 2004. So it's been a while. Okay? Like if the Republicans were a husband in those 2 states, it's been a while. Just saying. However, just 3 years ago in New Jersey, Republican Jack Ciattarelli, I'm going to go with Ciattarelli. I'm going to go with Ciattarelli. I don't know. I feel like I'm making it worse the more I try. Came within 3 points of upsetting incumbent Governor Phil Murphy. See, there's a proper name. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Don't be angry at me. Over discontent with the cost of living and taxes. Wow. Over discontent with actual issues. Cost of living. Like, notice this. This is very interesting. Republicans, people on the right, Republican came within 3 points of upsetting the incumbent over cost of living and taxes, not eating with fingers and rapping songs. Just pointing that out. You know, in Virginia, voters elected Republican Glenn Youngkin as governor, and the state's 11 House seats are almost perfectly divided at 6 for Democrats and 5 for Republicans. Those races, particularly New Jersey, may be closer than some would expect, as Democrats continue to struggle with the weakness of their brand. Indeed, Representative Mike Shirelli's lead over Citarelli currently sits at roughly 4 points, according to Real Clear Politics aggregator. However, 2 recent polls had the race even narrower. All right, and I'm not going to read all as we noted last month in these pages, Shirel will have to find a way to overcome dissatisfaction towards New Jersey's high cost of living, burdensome regulations, and rising energy costs. So Republicans and conservatives and libertarians, in there, did you hear anything about the culture war? No, you didn't. Why? Because generally speaking, the culture war, I think, is not a winning issue, yet you guys keep talking about it. Instead, you should be talking about economic issues, right? High cost of living, regulations, which plays a role in the high cost of living and economic issues, and then rising energy costs. Because at the end of the day, when I look in my wallet and I don't see a lot of money, and I don't mean because, we don't use cash anymore, but when I don't see a lot of money in my wallet, that gets me thinking, have the policies that I've been living under been very helpful to me? And I'm willing to hear out somebody that's got policies that will improve the state of my wallet or checkbook or Cash App, I guess, is what the young kids are using. But you see the point? Like, focus on actual policy issues, particularly economic ones. Those are the winning things. Those are the things that we can see have either upset the apple cart or almost upset the apple cart. That's important. So that's all I wanted to talk about on some of the races. Again, I don't really get too big into all these races necessarily, but I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of insight there, as to where they may head. I'll be watching them today. We'll look and we'll see how things play out. Perhaps they follow the trends that are showing in Poly Market and Kalshi. Perhaps they don't. It's hard to say. I don't consider myself in any way an analyst or, somebody that speculates on, like when I don't speculate on races, but when I do speculate on them, more than likely I'm just speaking what's pretty obvious that anybody, any person can come up with. But let's take a look at the chat and see what you guys are saying up here. Let's see what we got here. And yes, there it is. That's the name. We're going to put it up on there. Leighton Radner. He was running for mayor of a small city in Alaska. I don't remember the city. He was a great interview, especially because he's only like 25. So again, if you're a libertarian candidate, I recommend listening to that one. I also recommend listening to the one with Rob Yates. And another good one is, what's his name? Give me a second and I will tell you his name now that I don't have the distraction of trying to keep my thoughts in my head here. Dave Krantz. So Dave Krantz, he is running for Virginia. He's running out of Virginia for House of Delegates 13. He was a great interview too. Now, let me just kind of briefly say what made them so great. Leighton had his head screwed on straight for a young guy, and he really understood the vibe, the lay of the land in his city. He was talking about some of the history and how the history brought the city to where they are today. He understood the politics. He understood the social dynamics, and he was able to speak to them. And he was talking about also the relationships that he had built with other people. So it was just, I thought he did a really good job of basically saying, for a 25-year-old guy that's running for office, I have done my due diligence and put myself in a position where I can speak competently about this race so that when people hear me, I sound like somebody that should be in this position. I think that was great. Rob Yates, what stuck out to me with Rob was that he had a proper level of empathy for people. He didn't go too far. You know, like we talk about right now, like if we have too much empathy, then we're like, oh man, this serial killer grew up in a bad home, and this is the first time that he's ever been arrested. So maybe we just let him go on his own cognizance, his own cognizance. And then he'll come back for sure. And then the guy goes off and kills somebody. And we're like, why in the heck did you let this man go? He was accused of killing like 37 people, right? Like, I'm exaggerating, of course, for effect here. But the point being, when you have too much empathy, you get this empathy for the criminal or the alleged criminal, and it comes at the cost of victims or innocent citizens. And so I felt like Rob did a good job of balancing that and saying, like, look, on one hand, yeah, we want to be sympathetic. We want to have a little empathy for people that, may have grown up in a rough, had a rough life growing up. But at the same time, we have to draw a line and say, all right, there are certain things that you just simply cannot do, and you have to be held accountable for that. So I thought he did a really, really good job of balancing that. And then Dave Krantz, what I really liked about him was, normally I give candidates a little bit of a hard time if they don't have like a sport coat or a tie occasionally, not necessarily for my interviews, but presentation matters. Like the way that you appear matters to me. And I really got the vibe that he was, for where he was, for the way that the community presents itself in general, like a good old boy kind of presentation, he matched that. And that's really, if you're in New York City and you're running for mayor, I expect to see you in a suit and tie most of the time. Okay? If you're in a smaller city, if you're in, like, say, Jacksonville, and you're running for mayor, I expect to see you in a suit and tie, but also maybe sometimes a golf shirt and some slacks. That's fine too. But if you're in a rural area and nobody else really wears a suit and tie, you would be out of place to wear a suit and tie. And I know they say, like, you can never overdress, and I do believe that, but I just think that you should match the energy of the position and the location and the people that you're trying to get to vote for you. And I feel like just hearing some of the stories and some of the experiences that Dave Krantz had, it felt like he really was matching that level of energy of the constituents that would vote for him, of other candidates, of the position. And so, like, I wasn't bothered at all. I think he was wearing a T-shirt, a political T-shirt. He was wearing a campaign T-shirt. And so I was not bothered at all by that, because I was like, yes, it feels like you are fitting in. You're reading the room, and you're dressed for the situation, essentially. So I thought that was good. I mean, there were good things about all three of them, more than that, but those are some of the highlights. So if you're a candidate, check those guys out and follow their lead. Let's see what else we got here. That Liberty Lady says, I'd like to remind everybody, when it comes to New York, when given bad ideas and no ideas, people pick the bad ideas. Mom Donnie has bad ideas, but Cuomo had none. That's true. And that's what gave Obama his win. Back when he was running, remember, he was like, oh, the Affordable Care Act. And the Republicans were like, no, that's a terrible idea. And it was like, okay, well, what's your idea? And then we're like, we're working on it. Okay. The election, like the campaign is in full swing. We're working on it. We got something. But they never brought anything to the table. They had no idea. They had no ideas in a sense, right? And then, so therefore, he won. And in that particular case, I'm not so convinced that wasn't on purpose, but that's a conversation for a different day. So yes, make sure you have ideas, make sure they're relevant to the position that you are running for, so that when you're talking to voters, if healthcare is a big issue in your city or your state or whatever, that's what you should be talking about. If regulations, if people are, griping about regulations, talk about regulations. Make yourself sound like you're in tune with the voters. I understand libertarians, might want to talk about like end the Fed, or maybe they want to talk about, gun rights and stuff like that. If that's not what people are talking about, shut up about it. Talk about, Mom Donnie is talking about the things that New Yorkers care about. They care about their rent. They care about bad landlords. They care about, the wealthy and, who pays more taxes. Whether I think he's wrong on his policy positions, but he at least matched his policy positions with what New Yorkers appear to be talking about. And I think that's one of the reasons that that's given him this likely win. And it's pretty likely. Let's see what else. Vic Kaplan was another. Yeah, he was a good interview, and you caught me off guard with that. A libertarian out of New Jersey, right? Yeah, he's New Jersey. I think he's the New Jersey governor candidate. And he was another good interview. What I remember out of him off the cuff is that he took some hardline libertarian positions and did not back down. And I remember I defended him on social media because somebody was like, oh my God, can you believe this guy? He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I was like, what are you talking about? He came on my show like months ago and he was talking about that very proudly. It's not, you didn't, because like this person on Twitter was acting as if they discovered, some secret policy position that he held. And I was like, no, he actually was very proud of that policy position on my show. You uncovered nothing, you bozo. Let's see here. Let's see what else we got here. Yes. DL is looking into some information to talk about the Florida property tax. Yeah, I was thinking about doing that today, but then I was like, well, there's the elections, and I still got to sift through all the information, and I just haven't had a chance to sit down. So I figured I'm going to try to delay it until like maybe Thursday, or maybe I'll just, really delay it until Monday. We'll see. But I am going to spend some time digging into it so that I can competently come and talk to you guys and say, hey, is this a good idea or is it a bad idea? As a general rule of thumb, removing any property or any tax is always a good idea. However, we also have to be mindful of the consequences, right? We don't want to have unintended consequences. We want to make sure that we're well aware of what we're getting ourselves into. Let's see. DL is struggling with my name. No, I wasn't struggling with your name. I don't think so. Well, I don't think so. No. I was struggling with Leighton's name and some of the other names. I got your name. It's Joe Hanosh, right? Is that how you say it? Did you see the wink? Hope you saw the wink. Anyway, all right, folks. So let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back, and then we will discuss. So I'll show you some of the Libertarian Party candidates that are out there today, and then I'll kind of give you some of my own thoughts about some of the parties in the politics and where I think this country's headed. All right, just really quickly, I just want to point out that Joe is telling me that the property tax idea here in Florida is a bad idea. None of the 7 proposals eliminate property taxes 100%. All right, see, I don't have to do the show anymore. Just kidding. Just kidding. I'm trying to make jokes, folks. This is, my friend Dave Smith, he's a comedian. And I've never actually seen any of his comedy, so don't get mad, Dave. But I promise you that even if you think he's not a good comedian, if I ever did comedy, it would be way worse. So bad. Like, my wife does the standard wife thing. She rolls her eyes every time I attempt to tell a joke. And she's like, 50% of the time, she's like, yeah, that's an old joke. And she's like, you need to get new material. And I was like, no, I don't. I thought that was pretty funny still. So anyway, all right. So what do we got for libertarians going on here? So Libertarian Party, they put out a list, candidate list 2025. Now look, I am a libertarian in, philosophically, and politically. I'm also a registered libertarian. So I am with the Libertarian Party, which means I can criticize them. I'm allowed. And I will say, what's up with this font, yo? Like this, come on, guys. The graphic is kind of rough looking, but that font, like it looks anorexic. Like, come on, guys. We could do better than that. Anyway. All right. So I'm sorry, I'm being mean, but over in Colorado, I'm not going to try to read all the names because there's way too many names. But Colorado has a couple. You've got some school board and some city council. And then over in Kansas, you've also got some school board, city commission, city council, even mayor. All right. And then up in Michigan, we've got city council, police commissioner. That's a cool one. And then another city council. So, check them out. Especially if you live in one of these states, check them out. Give them a little bit of love on social media, promote their stuff if you did. And you should already know about it. Like if you live in Colorado, I'm just going to use that as an example, and you were not aware that somebody named Mary Buchanan was running for Thompson School Board, and you're a libertarian and you care about libertarian candidates, there's an awful lot of conditions there. But if that fits you and you didn't know this person, like shame on you. You should be a little bit more plugged in. And we should always be more plugged. If we're part of the party, especially a third party. Like if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat and you don't know a particular Republican or Democrat running in another city, like that's fine because there's so many of them, I don't expect you to know them. But there's so few of us, you should be more aware. And if you can, support them. Give them a retweet, give them a follow, give them a like, whatever. So that other people can hear about them and spread the word and give them a stronger chance of winning their elections. So we have some here for Colorado, Kansas, Michigan. Go on to my next graphic here. Let's see, which one is it? Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah. Over here, we got New Jersey, Vic Kaplan, as mentioned by, let's see here. Couldn't say his name right. Yeah, that Joe? Yeah, Joe. All right, there I go again, trying to make jokes. I'm just going to stop. I will try not to make another joke the rest of this show. Because I know they're going badly. But in New Jersey, we got Vic Kaplan, Alana Laguia. I don't know how to say your last names. I apologize if I get it wrong. So don't be angry at me. I'm your typical American. If it's not Smith or Jones, I don't know how to pronounce it, okay? Over in New Mexico, we've got school board, city council in New York. I actually had Matthew Morgan on for New York City Council. He was, which one was it? Can't remember the district now, but it was a couple episodes back. So we had him on. That one was an interesting interview because the technical side of it really was not cooperating. He was trying to join the show and he was having trouble joining the show. And then I did some voodoo behind the scenes and kind of made it happen. But then you had this weird, awkward thing where like I'm sitting down in the lower corner while also being on the main screen. So it was a little bit awkward, but hey, we made it. We try to do what we can on this show to promote libertarian candidates. North Carolina, of course, you've got Rob Yates, mayor of Charlotte, talked about him. Let's see here. Going along, Ohio. Look at you, Ohio. You got school board, city council, Roberto Torres for mayor, which I had on the show, city council, school board, city council. So it looks like Ohio is really trying to take over some school board and city council positions. So good on you, Ohio, for having, let's see, what do we got here? Like what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 candidates in Ohio. That's not too bad. That's especially for like not in a major election year, right? We're like in an off season. So I don't think this was too bad at all. Then, of course, this is not really a surprise to me, but then we jump on over to Pennsylvania, and they've got them all over the place. They got a big pile of them, and yeah, I don't think I recognize any of these names, but I don't have to because I am in Florida, so I don't have to worry about Pennsylvania. But I don't recognize them. But hey, check them out anyway, especially if you're in Pennsylvania. And the list is not over there. We actually have a few more down the line here. So we've got city council, auditor. Speaking of auditor, I think, the way that libertarians nitpick, we really need to encourage more of our people to run for any position that is an auditing position, or some of them aren't elected, they're appointed, where you get part of some sort of board or commission or something like that, where you're basically doing auditing. We should encourage a lot of our members to do that. I think that would be a very good role. We love nitpicking at each other, so this is a great place to nitpick. Go nitpick and see where the budget's being spent and let people know. I think that would be a great position. I see one here, tax collector. That reminds me of Davey, what was his last name? I can't remember his last name at the moment, but he ran for tax collector in Lake City, Florida, like 4 years ago. Was it 2020 or 2021? I think it was 2020. He ran for tax collector, and he was like, look, I can't get away from, and he was an anarchist, and he's like, I can't get away from taxes, right? He can't just, wipe them off the books. He doesn't have that power. But what he said, his slogan or his campaign was built on the idea that if you did not pay your property tax, he would obstruct any effort from the government to take your property from you. Now, whether or not that would last or how that would all play out at the end of the day, hard to say. I presume that he could only delay it. And so if he got removed from office or whenever he left office, then the next person can come in and be like, all right, all those back taxes are coming to haunt you now. So it could have played out, particularly worse. But it was an interesting spin for libertarians on running for tax collector. I remember when we ran 3 candidates here in Jacksonville, they were talking they had actually some conversations with somebody running for tax collector, and they had some ideas on, what if we had, I think the Tub Rohrbaugh, who was running for a city council, he was running for a district seat. His suggestion was, why don't we seek to make it a one-time payment? You make this one payment, then you're done. That's it. And it got their attention. I mean, it didn't go anywhere, but the tax collector, the person running for tax collector was like, that's an interesting idea. I'd like to explore it more. And whether he did or not is not nearly as relevant as getting that first start and getting someone to say, that's an interesting idea. I think in many cases, we talk about getting small wins. Sometimes a small win is just getting somebody to acknowledge that our idea has merit, even if they have no intention of taking it anywhere. Like just acknowledging and saying, that's interesting, as opposed to that's crazy, that'll never fly, or some other very negative response. So I think these are things, that we need to get out there, the conversations that we've had. All these candidates here, I think it would be phenomenal if they would document their experience and say, here are some of the positive takeaways that I had when I was running, and then kind of inspire other libertarian candidates, for how they may approach their runs as well. So maybe if the Libertarian Party is listening, maybe they can figure out a way to document all of this. Like maybe, you know what, I'll just throw out an off-the-cuff idea. Everybody loves Dan Smots. I mean, he does videography for a living. That's what he does. He gets paid to do that. They should they should allot some money. They should vote at the LNC to allot some money to pay him to make a documentary of libertarian candidates that have run, and to document some of the things that they observed that did well, some of the things that they observed that didn't go so well. Like, and it doesn't have to be, like, I think just a 1 hour documentary, if done well, could be a really great watch for potential libertarian candidates, and they can get some ideas and be like, oh, I was thinking about running for tax collector, and look at this tax collector, this person did, and what ideas they had. That would be phenomenal. So there's my contribution to the arena of ideas for the Libertarian Party. Let's continue. We got one more image here. This last one, Virginia, we've got Dave Krantz, who again was on the show. Great guy. Also had on Alan Rubio out of Washington. I enjoyed him, and trying to think of what stuck out with him. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. It's not him. I promise you. I can be a little bit airheaded sometimes. But I enjoyed having him on and speaking about Everett City Council. Oh, yeah. I remember now. He actually had a really interesting idea. He said their homelessness problem was largely in part from the surrounding cities that would basically make regulations or laws or ordinances for their cities regarding the homeless and basically push them out. And, we always talk about like, oh, what are we gonna do with the homeless? And it's just like, get rid of them, get them out of here. And it's like, well, where do they go? And so in his case, a lot of the homeless people that were coming to Everett were coming from other cities. And he was like, he's like, I would like to get with these surrounding cities in the county and discuss a broader plan for addressing it. Probably shove them to another major city. I'm just kidding. But I think that was a pretty phenomenal idea to say, hey, maybe we should work with some of the surrounding cities to deal with the problem that we, to better deal with an issue that we're all struggling with. So I thought that was pretty phenomenal. That was a really great idea. So I'll be looking forward to see whether or not he can make it on that city council seat. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think he was one of the guys that had a lot of interesting endorsements in his favor. So he might actually have a good shot. So those are some of the libertarian candidates that we have. I don't know if that's all of them, but that's a good handful. Again, it's off season right now. And I am actually going to be looking forward to having future conversations, interviews with candidates from all across the United States. And I'm going to be changing it up, how I do things. Should I tell you? You know what? I'm not going to tell you what my thoughts are on how I might approach this. Just know, keep your ear to the ground. I could say that because I'm Native American, but keep your ear to the ground for the rumblings that of what I will be up to with future candidates. I'm hoping to improve my interviews, my conversations with them, so that more people will watch and more people will get excited about libertarian candidates and, more importantly, libertarian policies. Because I do believe that many of our policies are desperately needed in this country. Now, let's shift gears here, and we're going to talk about some of the parties and the politics. Here's the thing. I think we're kind of at a crossroad right now. I think the elections today, kind of like that article that I read, which kind of suggested that it could be pivotal for the Democratic Party. I think some of the elections today are going to be pivotal for, at least the Republicans and the Democrats, and perhaps even the Libertarian Party as well. Here's the lay of the land as I see it. And I'm just going to be brutally honest. The Republicans, they have like a bit of a civil war going on. And I think it's all about Israel. Because you have the faction that's like, hey, we support Israel thick and thin, no matter what. And then you have this other faction, and they're like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's some things that are not so good here. And they're cozying up to some of the more crazy people that are like, the Jews are responsible for everything, right? And so on one side, you've got Israel can do no wrong. And then on the other side, you've got a mixture of, yeah, Israel has done some wrong, and it's all about the Jews. And I think that what happens is the other side, the Israel can do no wrong side, they're basically running with the Jews are doing everything, and they're broad brush stroking everyone that criticizes Israel as basically being one of them. And I think that's furthering this divide. So they're unable. So the rational people who are like, I don't have a problem with Israel existing. I don't think that the Jews are responsible for everything. Those people who are just like, but I think there are some problems in their foreign policy and how they're approaching conflict over there in the Middle East. Those people are having trouble finding common ground with the more establishment Republicans, because the establishment Republicans don't seem to want to have, they have no interest in hearing out any criticism whatsoever. I don't think that's good. I think that's going to continue to fracture the right. Now, the right tends to be in a good position right now because the Democrats, people on the left, they're flopping all over the place like a fish. However, if you noticed a little trend in some of the elections that I pointed out, or some of the, you've got New York City where it looks like Mamdani is pretty much going to win, right? And he's a Democratic socialist. Then you have over in Seattle, you have Katie Wilson, who is set to beat Bruce Harrell, and she is significantly more progressive. Okay, now the crazy guy over in Minneapolis, Omar, he doesn't look like he's going to win, but he at least got a lot of people's attention, right? A lot of people are hearing about it. And then V. Lyles, I don't really know where she sits in terms of how progressive she is, but she is totally, she looks like she's going to win against Terry Donovan. Rob Yates has, basically a straight uphill challenge. It's not even a hill. It's just like a straight wall. Like that's just the nature of being a libertarian challenger. And then in Boston, Michelle Wu is unopposed altogether. Okay. What does all that mean? I think if these folks secure their wins, as we saw, I think that's going to breathe a little bit of life into the Democratic Party. It's also going to breathe more life into some of the more progressive, some of the more far-leaning left ideas with Zoran Mamdani and Katie Wilson. And I think that's going to create an even bigger problem for Republicans and the right, because they're too busy fighting their little civil war. They're unwilling to find any common ground because you've got one faction that's unwilling to back down and say, okay, maybe we ought not give billions of dollars to another country. Maybe we ought not be bombing boats off the coast of Venezuela and basically going around and just attacking people without even congressional authorization, right? They are unwilling to budge from that. So they're creating their own fracture, right? They are doing that. And then you've got other people that are questioning it. And if they can't find common ground with the establishment, then they're essentially finding common ground with the radicals. I think on top of that, the fact that the media has a chasm now where we now have Podcastistan versus the mainstream media. I have talked about this before. Things operate differently in Podcastistan. People in the mainstream media don't seem to get it. All the intellectuals, they are trying to live by the old rules, which were basically, we're dominant. We tell people what they should hear, what they should believe. Like, effectively, that's basically what it ended up being. Whereas in Podcastistan, people can do what they want. That's what I said yesterday. I said in Podcastistan, I could bring people on and have just a very cordial conversation, no matter who they are. I could bring a Democratic Socialist on and have a nice, pleasant, cordial conversation where we agree on some things, disagree on some things, shake hands and walk away, and that's the end of that. Other people want a more hostile interview. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I have no issues. But they also want to dictate to people like me or others and say, no, you also should have hostile interviews if you bring somebody on. And that's not that I think those people have, even though they're in Podcastistan, they are still remnants from the establishment days, or they're taking up the ideas of the establishment. they're further creating this fracture. They're further creating this divide. So right now you have a divide based on policy. You also have this divide based on the mainstream media and Podcastistan, where things operate just a little bit differently. In Podcastistan, we can have the Nick Fuentes on, and we can talk to him, and we don't necessarily have to have a confrontational interview. That's just not how it works. It's not expected necessarily. It's expected by the establishment. So you have all these things at play. If the Democrats have their wins as we've seen them, as speculated, I think that's going to breathe some life into the Democrats and some of the far-leaning left people, especially since they have several people who are further left than we are typically used to seeing out of Democratic challengers or Democratic-ish challengers. I know that, like, Zoran Mamdani is technically not a Democrat; he is a Democratic Socialist. That's but effectively within this broader range camp, if you will. The right, if they don't get their act together, I think we will kind of get a sense of what it might look like in 2026. They may end up losing very badly in 2026. Now, when I say very badly, I don't mean like this Democratic sweep, but I think there will be, my anticipation is today we're going to see enough wins from the left that's going to invigorate them, right? I don't think it's going to be sweeping per se, but I think there's going to be enough. And then I think come 2026, it also won't be sweeping, but I think it's going to be a nice punch in the gut to the Republicans and people on the right. So now, where does the Libertarian Party fit in? They kind of don't, because we have our own internal problems, okay? One of our biggest problems is kind of like the right now. We love infighting. We love infighting more than we like fighting the duopoly. And it's kind of gross. I don't like it. I've criticized it. In fact, I criticized this recent spat that was initiated by the Libertarian Party of Colorado. Now, I have friends out there. I'm going to try to balance my words carefully so that I don't upset anybody. But I am the most objective libertarian in America, and I have to give it to you people straight. Okay? So, quickly running through history here, you had the establishment, in a sense. They were beating up on people and creating all kind of problems. Then you had, and this is back in like 2017, then you had people like Michael Heiss. He came in. He got a lot of people excited, ran with this Mises Caucus. They started taking over state affiliates, and I think they ended up with like some 30, 37, 39 state affiliates for which their members were in, the majority leadership. And then they went on and they took over the whole party. Okay, again, meaning they had all of their people primarily in most of the leadership positions. What they failed to do was to reach across the aisle and work with people that were not Mises. Because they didn't do that, they started losing ground. Another reason that they started losing ground is a lot of the people that came in to help them win, but didn't stay in long term to continue the work. Scroll forward, they start having some losses. Then we had our previous chair, Angela McArdle, who I was not kind to in a past episode based on what I saw was a failed chair. I basically said, look, as a chair, she failed. And I didn't say that for some of the same grumblings that other people did where they were like, I don't like her, she's a this, she's a that. I didn't do that. I just looked and I said, what was I expecting when I voted for you to be chair? Did you deliver on that? Did you deliver on what the Mises Caucus said they would deliver on? The answer was an unambiguous, unarguable no. You didn't. Okay, so I said you failed. And so now we're back to this internal struggle again because they didn't deliver results, which would have kept people like me and many others on board with them. And I was never a member of the caucus, okay? I just was like an outside observer, and I said, all right, I like the direction that you're telling me you're going to go in. Let's do it. I didn't see that happen. I criticized them in 2024 for not having that many candidates compared to 2022 nationwide. And in 2022 or 20? No, I'm sorry, 2020. So I criticized him because in 2020, I personally interviewed some like 25 to 30 candidates for 2020. And there were over 600 people that ran for office. Now, numbers don't necessarily, you can't just say lots of people ran, hooray, we're winners. A lot of it is substance, like were they a fit for the position? Did they run a good campaign? There's a lot of dynamics there to be talked about. But what I didn't see in 2024 was I didn't see, okay, fewer numbers, but higher quality. I just saw basically the same quality, but fewer numbers. So if we're going to go with the same quality, then you might as well just run a bunch of them. But that didn't happen. I would have accepted, hey, instead of running 600, we ran 300 nationwide, but man, we really picked the best of the best, and we ran some tough campaigns. I would have accepted that. That's not what happened. Okay, so now what's happening is we're starting to see a switch back or a switch away. Colorado, they just did that. They brought on, I don't know to what extent, but they basically had a switchover. Then they started doing the social media posting. And I feel like some of their social media posts are just basically a poke in the eye to those that they basically usurped. And so I look at it as like, why are we continuing to argue? Have you not seen what's going on politically? We don't have this kind of time. And my argument today is, I used to kind of get involved into the dynamics, and I would look at all the details, and I'd be like, okay, this person's right. No, this person's right. Now I'm not doing that. Now I'm just like, if I can't count it, it doesn't count. I want to see results. If you run for chair, I want to see the results of how many members were added to the rolls at the end of your term. I want to see how much money you brought in or came in by the end of your term. If you started with $10,000 and you have $8,000 when you left, just making up an example, you failed because you're at a net loss of $2,000, right? If you started at $10,000 and you have $15,000, but you spent $5,000, that's good. That's something I can count, right? And now we could compare that to past. We can dive into that deeper. But what I'm looking at is I want to see numbers, and they need to be quality numbers. And if I don't see these numbers, I'm just going to say you failed. I've been starting to ask some of the candidates. I'm like, I realize that libertarians don't do so well, especially as you get up higher, like governor and, state representatives and stuff like that. I know it becomes a bigger challenge. So what's a win look like for you, right? And so like when I was talking to the guy out of New York City, what was his name? Matthew Morgan. He said when he spoke to Larry Sharp, who's running for governor, by the way, he said when he spoke to Larry Sharp suggested that if he could come in second place, that would be a win. Okay, I will accept that. If he comes in second place today, I will consider it a win. If he comes in very poorly, I will not be kind to him. This is where I am now. Because the Libertarian Party, they need to get their act together. They need to stop acting like a bunch of children. And we talk a lot about meritocracy, but then we worry about who followed this rule, who did this, who did that, which is fine. Those are important things. But we do it at the expense of also holding people accountable for things we can count. Because I don't have time these days to dive into all the details and read 1,400 emails, check out 37 screenshots, and, all this information. I'm just going to cut it and make it simple. I'm going to basically do what a libertarian preaches. I go to the store, I judge things based on what? The price, partially. Largely, right? The price. I look at a number. I want this bread or this bread. Which one's cheaper? This one's cheaper. This is one I'm going to buy. Period. And I move on about my way, right? And then if the manufacturers see that they're not selling their bread numbers, then they know, hey, you know what? I need to do something different. I need to change my marketing strategy, right? That's how I'm approaching this now. Just looking at them like I'm using numbers as a signal in the same way that we libertarians talk about prices are a signal. They're a signal to buyers. They're a signal to sellers. If I go to the store and I see buy one, get one 50% off, that's a signal to me. Now, I could interpret that in many ways. I could say, oh, looks like they have a surplus, but I'm going to take advantage of that surplus, right? I could just be very simple about it and say, oh, they must want me to buy this really badly. And I like that, so I'm going to buy it because I have that kind of money. I have the money to buy, one of these and then maybe buy one for half off or whatever the case might be. But do you see the point here? This is where I am now. And I'm just going to be holding libertarian candidates accountable based on what I can count. Because y'all can't seem to get your act together. You're too busy fighting. I saw a fight over a stupid meme the last couple of days from Colorado. You guys were busy fighting. Whoopie-doo. Did that bring any more liberty? Did it bring any more funds in? I mean, if you could show me that it brought funds in, okay, fine. Did it bring any more members? Like countable. I don't mean that one person who's going to be a little bit, loose with the truth. And they're going to be like, yeah, I'm totally supporting him now because of that meme. Because honestly, I don't believe you. I need more than one or two. I need to see something that's very unambiguous and clear. You posted a meme, everybody fought about it, and bam, you went from 100 members to 150 members. Okay, maybe that's something. I'll give you the credit for it. But if you don't show me numbers, I'm going to back you in a corner and I'm going to be very brutal with you. I don't care who you are. Because at the end of the day, I have a son that's 6. I want him to grow up in a better world. And right now, it's not looking too promising. Not from a liberty perspective. And I don't have time for all your shenanigans. So either get your act together or you take what I dish out. And it's not going to be pleasant. And since I tend to be more right-leaning, I'm going to be a little bit more tough on Republicans and the right as well. I don't always like their policies. Sometimes I like the ideas, and I think they're better off in a free market, not in policy. So I will criticize that. So for me, if you're looking at it like, how does shit fall downhill for me? It's libertarians, the right, Republicans, and then the left. And I have some agreements and disagreements with everybody, right? But that's where I am. But I am going to be coming harshly, I don't think it's a word. I'm going to become more harsh than I was before. Not mean-spirited, although I might sound mean, but that's okay. But I'm going to be tough. And I'm not going to let up. And some of the things that I'm planning for future interviews with candidates, I'm going to be tough on them too. And you're going to see a tougher DL than you've seen in the past. Because I want us to win. I want liberty to advance. I don't have time for laziness or shenanigans. Period. Get your act together or be held accountable. Let's check out some comments and let's see what you guys are saying. Maybe you guys are disagreeing with me. I don't know. But let's see what you guys got here. Do. Let's see. Let's see. Dan Smott's made a video of LP 2024 convention that made it appear Rechtenwald got the nomination. Too much bias. I don't care about the bias. I don't know that we have anybody else to call upon. He does make good videos, and it's very simple. Dan, here's money. Make this video. This is what we want. And either he delivers what we ask for or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, we don't use him again. Very free market. Very simple. I don't care about the past biases, right? I didn't see the video. I don't know. Maybe it did. And if somebody's got a better name, fine. Suggest that name. I'm not beholden to one particular name. It just happens to be the name that I know. And I know he's involved in the liberty sphere and I believe he remains a registered libertarian. So therefore, start there. Start inside your house, and then if you have to recruit people to do work outside of the house, then so be it. But that's where I'm starting. Let's see. Yes. Davy Parrish. That's his name. Good guy. And he was on Dad Talk as well. He was actually one of the very few people that was on Dad Talk in person, because he lives like an hour and a half away, or he did. I don't know if he's moved. And so he traveled out here with his son. His son and my son ran around downstairs playing while we were up here doing our recording. And it was fabulous. And then I went downstairs and I saw the room. It was so funny. I saw the room after he left. I saw the room, and it was just toys everywhere. And I took a picture of it and I sent it. I said, man, they sure had fun. And he goes, oh my gosh, he was so apologetic. He was like, if I had known that the room was, destroyed like that, he goes, my son's cleanup game is really good. And I actually had no problem with it. I just helped my son. I was like, because to me, it was more important that the boys had fun. We can deal with the mess later. Little boys, little kids, messes. I mean, like, they go together like peanut butter and jelly. So good with that. But yeah, that was his name. Let's see. By the way, LP is raising money to make a video, I presume, for him. I don't know who they're making it for, but like, I'll look into it and see. Let's see. Let's see what else. I mean, maybe, okay? Maybe he's a Republican infiltrator, okay? I don't know. Like I said, it's a name that I know. I know he does quality work, and I stand behind my comment that either we tap him and we pay him to do something very specific, and that's my suggestion, or we find somebody else. If there's another name, throw it out there. That's fine. I'm cool with that. Like, I whatever. Do I think he's a Republican infiltrator? I don't know. I don't really care. I care about results. That's what I care about now. I'm not getting into this Jerry Springer-esque drama anymore. I want to see results, period. What are the results? You mad at somebody for somebody that they said or did, or something they said or something that they did? Fine, whatever. If the information is basically out there and I can spend like 5 minutes consuming it and becoming aware of what's going on, then perhaps I will. But in the past, I have spent hours and hours and hours diving into like a single topic to get my head wrapped around the truth. And honestly, I just don't feel it's a value add anymore. So I don't care anymore. That's just where I am, And it's just easier for me to look at numbers and say, well, you failed. End of story. You didn't get second place in your run. You said you wanted to. You failed, right? Now, am I going to be brutal like if at all times? Not necessarily, right? It depends. I'm going to use a little bit of judgment there. If you ran for chair and you won and then you met zero metrics, yes, I'm going to be brutal on you. If you ran for office in a very difficult run and you didn't get second place, but you didn't do too bad, I will temper my criticism. I'll say, well, you did fail at your goal. Perhaps the goal was too lofty, right? Maybe that's what it is. But I will acknowledge when somebody did not miserably fail. But I am going with numbers, what I can count now. I am getting on the meritocracy bandwagon, and I am going to be a bit rough in some cases and brutal in others. And where I can, I will try to temper it. This is me. Let's see. Liberty's son for Duval mayor in 2040. I hope not. I don't even know. We'll see. I am not even, I just don't even know. Let's see. Keith says, if I were called to serve and someone asked me what party I belong to, I think I would say none, but I am aligned with the Libertarian Party. I think a lot of people feel this way. And some of it's partisan, like this group, that group. Some of it's just like, I don't want to be associated with all this fighting. The fighting is not good policy. It doesn't advance anything. Let's see, what else? Okay, fair enough. Joe's on a tangent. He says, if I ever run Republican, I might get him to make a video for my campaign. Fine. Right? Just whatever you, like, same principle as always. You ask somebody to make a video. This is what I want. This is what I'm paying for. Expect what you get. Expect what you're paying to get what you're paying for. Plain and simple. That's where I am. Right? No holds bar anymore. Let's see. Keith said, I would be happier without parties. It's like a political army, too much like war. Yeah, I don't think we can get away from having parties. What I would like to see is a proper multi-party country. We technically, in a sense, are multi-party because you have the Republicans, you have the Democrats, you have the Libertarians, you have the Green Party, and you have all these other parties, right? So in a stricter sense, you do have a multi-party system. However, I look at it and I say we don't really have a multi-party system because at the end of the day, the top two, the Republicans and the Democrats, they are not only dominant, but they basically control things. They can get, they've gotten Libertarians kicked off the ballot. They've gotten Green Party kicked off the ballot. When the Libertarian Party suggests, hey, maybe we should make a deal with them, I generally object to it because we've never gotten anything from them. Right? Like think back to Arizona when a lot of libertarians were like, hey, Mark Victor, he should drop out of the race and support Blake Masters. One of my arguments was, what are we getting out of this? Like later, where are they going to scratch our back later if we do that? Now, generally, I'm going to generally oppose the idea of a candidate dropping out. I think that's a dereliction of what you said you were going to do and all the money you raised, right? People didn't donate money to you so that you could later drop out and support somebody else. They could have just donated to that candidate. So I think that there's a problem there. But if we're going to talk about like saying, okay, I'll vote for this legislation, which is maybe not so libertarian, if you'll vote for my legislation, or, hey, we'll do this if you will get your members to vote for our candidate. If we had a system like that, that's one that I would actually like. But we don't have that. There is no, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's just, hey, scratch our back. That's it. That doesn't work for me. So I oppose any of these attempts right now because I want to see the Republicans give something. Now, you might argue and say, well, Donald Trump freed Ross. That cost him zero in political capital. I want to see something that costs some political capital. I want to see some voters get upset and say, why did you make that deal with the Libertarians, with the Libertarian Party or the Libertarian candidate? That's what I want to see. Then I will believe that they actually mean it and they deserve us giving a little bit. But I want to see that first. And I think in order for us to get to that point, we, the Libertarian Party, the community, need to get our act together and start delivering quality. This is why I'm going to be such a pain when it comes to numbers. What can I count? If I can't count it, it don't count. Period. And if you can show me that you've delivered it by the numbers unambiguously, then I will have a change of heart about whatever topic. You made a meme, and that meme upset half the libertarian community, but you can show me a very clear, unambiguous win from it. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give it to you. I'll say you gave me a win. Fine, I will do it, and I will talk about it on this show. It's my word to you, libertarians, because at the end of the day, results. Period. Let's see. What else? Yes, the two are one, a uni party. This is why I ask people what they have chosen the party why they have chosen the party instead of none of the above. I think it's none of the above, right? And like this is the point. If we're not like, it's weird. It's weird to me. You have so many libertarians, some of the very same ones that have went around saying the duopoly is a uni party. And then some of those same people have later come around and said, we need to support Republicans. So you're basically telling me I need to support Republicans and Democrats, the uni party. No, we need to get our act together and we need to deliver some serious blows. We need to get their attention and we need to get them on board with negotiating. That's what we need to do. And now, will we be able to negotiate at the federal level? Not for some time. But can we make some headway at some local level? I think so. So get to it, libertarians. Get your act together. All right, folks. That is my show. That's what I've got for you today. Hope you found it informative and inspiring. I know I was a little bit angry sounding there, but hopefully you found it inspiring, because I'm going to be trying to push the Libertarian Party and libertarians and the candidates toward delivering quality results. So hopefully that does inspire you. I don't mean it to sound negative. I really don't. But we have to assess where we are, right? So hopefully you did find it informative and inspiring. Watch the elections today. Let's see how they play out. And whether you're watching this show live with me right now or you're watching it later, come back later and drop me a comment. That helps out the algorithm a bit. It also gives me some insight into your thoughts. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I should offer a correction. Maybe you want to be, promiscuous with some praise, or maybe you're one of the libertarians that I was criticizing and you want to come in and you want to give me hell. That's fine. I'm all ears. But for now, with all of that being said, I'm out. I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode of POTUS Weekly. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.